Thank you. Welcome to this call today. This is a little bit different for me. I was just telling Jheri, I host calls all of the time but never outside of real estate. So this is kind of a new one, and we're going to marry the two a little bit. So there's some people in here that are entrepreneurs, that are realtors, that are moms that have kids they're kind of struggling with and trying to figure out where to start with. And so I get feedback or I get questions all of the time about ADHD. And so I thought this was perfect because I have this sweet friend, Jheri, who is a master ADD coach, and she's going to teach us all of the things today. So before we get going, I just wanted to say hi to Jheri, let you say hi, and then I'll give you an intro here properly. But Jheri's great today. If you're not following her on Instagram, please give her a follow. I sent her link in the email. The way this kind of came about is it's probably been 5 years ago. I thought maybe I had one of my kids may have ADHD. And so I start going through this rabbit hole, and Dr. Amen he became like my best friend virtually. And so I'm like reading all of his stuff. I'm learning about all the different forms of ADD, and I'm reading all the questions, and every single one I'm reading, I'm like, wait a minute, that feels familiar. And I feel personally attacked right here. And like, what is happening? And then I was realizing, oh my gosh, this is applying to me a lot. And at the same time, I had just started my business, and I had more tabs open than usual in my brain, which I usually have 100, and now I probably had 200. And so those extra hundreds weren't getting closed off. They were kind of staying, I would finish everything to about 80%. And I until it was like hair on fire, right? Does that sound familiar to anybody else? Everyone's nodding. We're all in the right room, you guys. This is going to be a big support group by the end of this. Okay, so I have all these tabs open. They're closed to about 80%, and I was just like, what is going on? And then add in that I couldn't remember names, and if I'm talking to you, Jheri could be talking to me face to face and tell me, okay, I'll meet you at Tia Rosa tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, I'll see you there. And then tomorrow at 4 o'clock, I'm like, did I have something today? And so I started doing these things without knowing, where I was saying, okay, Jheri, that's awesome. Can I ask you a favor? Can you shoot me a text? I'd love to meet you tomorrow at 3. Can you shoot me a text? And then I was doing different things and I didn't even realize. And so fast forward, I decided to go get tested for ADHD. And you could have told me the sky was red. It would have been this, it would have not blown me away any more than if you had told me I had ADD at the time. Now, I don't know, Jheri's going to probably analyze me after this and tell me that I have many other issues. I don't know. But I was a perfect student. I had straight A's. I was never hyperactive. I didn't fit this mold that I thought ADD was. It was in my brain. And it was so funny. I went and got tested, and I go back for my results, and he sits me down and he says, Tina, it's completely the same. I'm sitting down and I'm expecting him to be like, no, you need some hormones or something. I don't know. And he says, well, you just won the race. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you won the ADD race. And he pulls me up this chart and this diagram and what my brain was doing through all the testing, which was a whole nother story, even just sitting through the testing. When they told me I had to sit there for 30 minutes and look and do this test, I was like, you don't even have to test me. I can tell you right now. I mark all the boxes. So I said, that's so interesting. And I was telling, he said, you probably have buffered things in your life. I'm like, no, I don't think so. And I started realizing, wait a minute, I learned how to read lips early on, because if I'm sitting in a restaurant and there's a lot of background noise, I cannot hear Jheri sitting across from me because I can hear everyone else's conversations. Like, that's not normal to learn how to read lips. Okay. And so that was me buffering. And then another thing I said, I've just always been so confident. I was just raised by parents that taught me I could rule the world and I'm going to be president of the world one day. And I have this abundance of confidence. And so that helps me not get paralyzed in making decisions. I just jump quick. I jump off the cliff and build a parachute on the way down. And it's because I'm so confident. And he was like, well, or there's something like misfiring in there that's telling you, you're not really aware of all of the fear or the the danger that's happening. I know, AJ, it was funny to me too. And also like mind blowing. Since then, I'm giving you a long intro, but since then, I have been obsessed with learning about our brains and that it's really a superpower. I am capable of doing so many things and so many things very well if I can dial in and figure out the things that work for my brain. And so if there's anything I could do today, it would be to one, help you guys get some tips and tricks from Jheri, even just to identify like, oh, I read lips. That means, guess what? I don't sit in loud restaurants anymore. We sit on the patio or we go to restaurants where they're not super loud. Like you learn things that if you can identify them, that work in your benefit and become your superpower. And then second fold, which we're not going to get into a ton today, is but for these kids that are sitting at school at a desk for 8 hours a day. They were never meant to sit for 8 hours a day. Kids were never meant to do that. The public system is broken. We will have another conversation about that another day because I'm very passionate about it. But they are so good at teaching those kids that cannot physically sit for 8 hours and learn something they're not interested in into thinking that they're not smart or they're trouble or they're something. And then they carry those labels for the rest of their lives. So that is something, if anything else, that I would say is so important for us to learn and identify and figure out how to help. Okay, that was a long intro. Obviously, I have a lot to say about this. We are so lucky today to have Jheri. She is a friend and, like I said, a master instructor and parent and teen ADHD coach. I am going to read a little bit of her bio here because it's good. She's a former corporate airline trainer and radio talk show host with KTAR. She's reinvented herself many times using ADHD as her superpower in both business and life. She combines lived experience, professional training, and a dynamic, relatable approach to help clients build confidence, improve communication, and create systems. Is that everyone's favorite word? Systems. Systems that actually work. So if you have somebody helping you build systems, they do actually work. Recently, Jheri was featured in 2 international events, the Parenting Your Kid with ADHD Summit and the Thrive Summit for Adults with ADHD, where she shared insights on motivation, mindset, and the power of self-awareness. Today, she leads workshops and coaching programs designed to help women entrepreneurs harness their unique neurodivergent strengths, break free from overwhelm, and build businesses and lives they truly thrive in. So with that, I will turn the time over to you, Jheri. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And that was quite an introduction. So thank you so much. I am excited to be here. Anytime I'm able to, this is probably one of my very favorite things to do is to just sit here in workshops, especially with women. And women and ADHD looks a little bit different than just men and ADHD. So I really like this kind of intimate setting where we can talk and discuss these things. I do have ADHD, so I talk fast and I also over prepare. So I probably have like 3 slides worth of presentation here today. It's one of the most challenging things is to do an overview of ADHD and in an hour, try to find the most helpful things. So we're just going to jump into it, and I may not be able to see my screen. I might miss questions. So if you guys want to help me out, if there's questions, and just let me know as I'm doing this presentation. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can't really see anybody, so that helps. Okay, so if you think you have ADHD, you know you have ADHD, or you know someone who has ADHD, then this presentation is for you. We're going to, how come I cannot get this bar to go away? Let's see. Okay, well, usually it's not sitting there. Let's see.
For Canva.
Yeah, hopefully it will go away. It's sharing the screen since I'm on your link. Anyways, that it's just going to bother me. Is that going to bother anybody else? I can't get
We
this
don't
bar.
see it on our, I don't see it on my end.
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't.
you don't. You don't have a
No,
big black bar across the screen.
no.
Okay, well then I won't worry about it. That's great. So And again, if you have any questions as I'm going, I'll take questions at the end as well. But we're just going to do an overview of ADHD. We're going to talk about some myths and facts, what it is, what it isn't. I've highlighted some things that I think are important for anyone who's starting this journey. And then we'll end with some strategies, some tactics, different tips and tricks, how our brain works, and what are some things that we can do, some different things that we can put in place to help us stay on track and organized. When we think of ADHD, it's really interesting. I do a lot of posting on social media. We hear a lot of the negative. And so a lot of us, if we've heard of ADHD, we know that it's poor working memory or being easily distracted. Maybe it's being disorganized, risk taker. I don't look at it as being a negative thing, but we hear that. Sometimes we hear not self-aware, fidgety. If I post about the negative side of ADHD, all of the successful entrepreneurs will come out of the woodwork. In fact, I've had celebrities like Sharon Stone and different people come on and really like the posts that talk about superpower and get frustrated when we talk about it this way, because ADHD is just as much the positive things that we hear as well. And maybe you haven't heard some of these things: a high IQ, creativity and innovation, high energy levels, fantastic entrepreneurs, enthusiastic, intuitive, usually have a passion for learning things that they care about, quick thinkers. So there's a lot of gifts. In fact, I would argue that there's a lot more gifts than there are debilitating symptoms when it comes to ADHD. So when I'm working with clients, I tell them, if we're very much, I don't know if you can relate with this, but kind of all or nothing mindsets typically. And so when we're kind of stuck in something, we can stay stuck there and our superpowers will be a little bit suppressed. When we can just find some strategies and overcome some things that are holding us back, it's like, watch out. ADHDers can, excuse me, can really accomplish anything that they put their minds to. Um, real quickly, I didn't introduce him. For lack of time, I didn't show a lot of videos of Dr. Dodson, but I had the opportunity to sit in Dr. William Dodson's living room with a camera crew for over 4 hours. This was several years ago now, but I asked him every question my clients had, every question I could think of. And he is the very top medication specialist for ADHD for adults in the United States, but he also is just an expert. He's speaking at the big CHAD conference, which is the huge conference that they have for ADHD. He's the keynote speaker. He is a mentor. He's someone I really respect. And he was the very first one to ever start writing on rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And if you haven't heard of that, we're going to talk about it in a little bit. But I wanted to share this with you because this is him talking about ADHD.
Can you guys hear? No, we can't hear. Sorry, Jheri.
You cannot hear it. You can't hear anything.
Hmm.
Hmm. Well, I don't know. I'm not good at troubleshooting. Everything on my end looks okay, but
Stevie, is
um,
there something she needs to do on her end to be able to get sound through shared screen?
Let me check.
Sorry, I'm not either. That's why
hmm.
Sweet Evie is with me.
I mean, if it's going to take too much time, it's not a very long video. I can just overview what he's saying. Yeah, I don't know what to think about that because it.
You can share your screen again. Stop sharing first and share your screen. There should be an option at the right part to share sound.
Before as I'm sharing it. Oh, share sound. I see this.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, you guys. I many times I work from my link. I should have worked on this first. I made sure it worked through someone else's link. Okay, let's try this again. Let me know if you can hear it. I use Canva and I love Canva, but it's a little bit tricky when it comes to
People
video.
with ADHD are the world's best patients.
Can you hear it?
Yep.
Uh, First of all, they're very bright, they're highly motivated, they are wickedly funny, they know all the latest jokes. They have what Paul Winder referred to as relentless determination. That once they hook into something, they will just keep with it until they overcome and master that problem. So if you could imagine getting a group of patients who are smart, hardworking, likable, fun to be around, and determined to do better. Who could ask for more? And at the time, nobody was treating adult ADHD. There were 3 people in North America who would treat an adult with ADHD.
Really?
So I figured there was a niche there,
Yes.
and there was virtually nothing written. We still do not have adult diagnostic criteria 25 years later. We're still focused on children, even though we now know that the disorder is genetic, neurologic. It doesn't go away with age, and that wherever you find a child with ADHD, you can find at least one parent with ADHD and probably half of the other children with ADHD. So it's one of those things where when you identify one person, you've only just begun. You need to evaluate all the first degree relatives. So I end up treating very large SIBShips. I have one family where I treat 43 people out of the same genetic SIBShip.
Wow, right? But I do go, I share Amy's passion about the school system. I go into schools and I work with administrators and teachers, educating them on ADHD and neurodivergence. And I like to play that in the very beginning because, and he talks a lot about that. I just didn't have time to share it today. The school system and the way that kids are asked to sit still, not talk, the school system really wasn't built for them. The way that we learn, Montessori schools tend to be probably the best school for ADHDers because they learn best by being able to stand up, walk around, touch things, talk to each other, touch, feel, see, visual. It just doesn't work well for their learning style. I like to share that video because, I feel sorry for teachers too. They'll be in a situation where they have, especially if they have hyperactive ADHD children, that aren't following directions. They're not conforming to what's supposed to be happening in the classroom. They don't have any tools. We're not required in Arizona and most states in the US to have any training at all when it comes to neurodivergence. And so, I've been in IEP meetings where the principal has told us, well, we can't accommodate these things on the IEP. And I'll say, it's required by law. You have to. And they don't know. I've worked a lot with the schools. And so helping them reframe the way that they see ADHD, because when they start making some adjustments, when they recognize where ADHDers thrive in leadership positions, being given responsibility and with praise, it's the difference between I'll be in an IEP meeting and half the teachers are really kind of, saying some negative, we'll just say negative things about the child, and they're really challenged in their classroom with the child. And some of these teachers will really vent and go on in these meetings. And then half of the teachers, the other half are saying, oh, I love this kid. They're great. We have such a special bond. And it's like, how could this be the same kid? Because they're really responding to their environment. Anyways, I digress and come back to my presentation. I could say a lot about that. I just want to do an overview of ADHD. So just so you know, we hear ADD all the time because we used to separate ADD and ADHD. In the medical world, we no longer use the term ADD. And this is because everything now falls under the umbrella of ADHD. ADHD can stand for being hyperactive, or the H can stand for hyperarousal. And many women identify not with being hyper, but being hyper aroused or being hyper on the inside. So that could be having trouble sleeping, multiple thoughts at one time, being restless, not being able to just sit quietly and relax, always having to be doing something. Your foot could be tapping. So that hyper arousal is actually very common for ADHDers. In fact, most ADHDers are not hyperactive. So just so you know, it's all under ADHD. And these are the core features or symptoms of ADHD is distractibility. We probably are aware of that, being easily distracted, struggling to focus for long periods of time and sit still, hyperactive activity or hyper arousal or both. Impulsivity, Impulsivity can look like a lot of different things. It can look like substance abuse. It can look like just acting without thinking, quick impulse decisions of spending money or blurting things out. Sometimes it can be the way that we react to information, being extremely sensitive. I mean, there's just this, and it's interesting because I like to think of ADHD as a spectrum because not one person looks just like the other. You have ADHD people that really struggle with anxiety. You have ADHD people who've never felt anxiety in their life. The impulsive actions or behaviors that they have vary from person to person as well. So another thing I will see in the school system is maybe a child with a diagnosis and a teacher will say, that's not ADHD. Or that's not even, autism, for example. And so understanding that there is so much misinformation and misunderstanding of what ADHD is. We no longer look at ADHD as that childhood diagnosis where the boy can't sit still in his class. I mean, it's crazy to think that years ago, they actually believed girls couldn't even have ADHD. So we've come a long way in the DSM, but as Dr. Dodson said, we still are doing a terrible job. The criteria doesn't go over age 16. So this is why a lot of people believe that they grow out of ADHD because their symptoms manifest differently and because the criteria that we use to evaluate ADHD only goes up to age 16. And then the last one here is emotional dysregulation. This is huge. So many people are unaware that emotional dysregulation is one of the main symptoms of ADHD. And we're going to talk about that a little bit with RSD. But I can't remember if I included it in the presentation, so I'll mention it here. That I think Dr. Dodson says in a video that there is a doctor from the University of Utah, actually, that does a lot of research and work with ADHD. And he said if he could do it all over again, he would just go back and redefine ADHD as just distractibility and emotional dysregulation. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, that's a mouthful, is a terrible name because very few people identify with that name. Attention is not deficit. I'm sure if you have ADHD or you think you have ADHD, you can relate with this. When you can hyper focus, you can focus on something I can hyper focus on something for 6 hours and forget to eat and be completely in the zone. It's just that the attention is inconsistent. And we're going to talk about that. Why does our brain get engaged sometimes and not other times? How is our neurological system wired differently than a neurotypical? And by neurotypical, we just mean not neurodivergent. If you have a neurotypical brain, that just means more people than not have that kind of neurological system. If you have a neurodivergent neurological system, it just operates differently. So it's not that our attention is deficit. We are really good at hyperfocusing. And when we hyperfocus, we can usually get twice as much done as the average person and do it quite well, I might add. And also when it comes to ADHD, 70% of ADHDers are not hyperactive. Just real quickly, this is just looking at the DSM, just because we always heard about 3 to 5% of the population is ADHD. No, this is not true. This is what the surveys say in different places. So the question is, why is there such a prevalence? Why? Because what we now know is that really between about 12 to 13, or I'm sorry, yeah, about 10 to 13% of the population is ADHD. So why is there this discrepancy? Well, I just want to point out for anyone who's thinking about getting evaluated or having a family be evaluated, the DSM that we have right now, DSM-5, is based solely on behaviors and
Tell
bad
us what,
behaviors.
Jheri, not to interrupt you, but DSM, can you tell us what that is real quick?
Yeah, well, so the DSM is the criteria that doctors are using to determine if you fall under, and it's not just for ADHD. If you were going to go be evaluated for OCD or an anxiety disorder or body dysmorphia or autism, the doctors are referring to the DSM. So that is the updated information that is there for doctors to refer to when they're evaluating, when they're looking at criteria. It's all the new research and science that determines, for example, if this is ADHD, it's telling us this is what ADHD is. This is how you would evaluate. This is how they're determining if you have ADHD or not. And so right now we're on the DSM-5. So they update the DSM when they have more information. So just to give you an example, when it comes to OCD, OCD runs in my family, and I don't think I put this in the presentation, but just so you know, ADHD also comes with a very high comorbidity rate. Comorbidity is basically an additional diagnosis. So if you have ADHD, there's a 60% likelihood that you will have at least one comorbid condition. And it's not necessarily any specific condition. It could be ADHD and autism, ADHD and OCD, ADHD and anxiety. But there's a 60% likelihood you'll have one comorbid condition and a 40% likelihood that you would have a second comorbid condition. And this is why when we decide to get an evaluation, we really want to make sure we're working with a specialist, not just someone who's a psychiatrist, but a specialist. Dr. Dodson is the one that taught me that 93% of psychiatrists today do not know how to properly treat ADHD, and 50% of pediatricians state that they wouldn't even know how to properly evaluate someone with ADHD. So the water really gets muddled as well because, like, let's take autism and ADHD, for example. 5 of my 7 children are on the spectrum, and 6 of my 7 have ADHD. It is not usually what we think it is. I mean, there are kids that are on the spectrum that are really chatty, that have friends, because it's about the way that their brain processes information and that they're taking in sensory information and social cues. And so, if you don't have a specialist or that knows the difference between OCD and some of these, different diagnoses, many times in my office, I'm working with teenagers, young adults, and adults. About 50% of the time, there's something missed in their diagnosis or they're misdiagnosed. And so a lot of times, women with ADHD, they're not given an ADHD diagnosis, they're given a depression or anxiety diagnosis. Kids, many times, have ADHD and they're on the spectrum as well, but they're diagnosed with depression and OCD instead. So anyways, I could go on and on. That's my thing, that I get really frustrated with that because we're actually doing a really terrible job in the mental health field of diagnosing neurodivergence and recognizing it properly. But as I go back to girls specifically, because the DSM is based on behaviors. I think there's 18 behaviors that they're looking at in the DSM-5. It misses most girls who aren't not disruptive. Most girls are not hyperactive, but they are doing a lot of masking and internalizing. It misses very smart people who find compensations. That they just have a lot of gifts and they're able to just kind of fake it, And then also it misses people who are willing to work twice as hard for half as much. Maybe they're struggling in school, they're struggling to keep up, but they're masking and they're getting good grades. And so we wouldn't suspect a girl who's sitting in class and has good behavior and is getting decent grades. Nobody's going to look at her and think that she has ADHD.
People with ADHD use the wrong words to describe feelings. So when somebody comes into my office and says, "Doc, I'm so anxious," so let's put away that label and tell me more about your baseless, apprehensive fear that for no reason you feel as if something awful is just about to happen. At least half the people go, "I didn't say I was afraid. Yeah, I didn't say that." I said, that's what I thought. Tell me what you are using that word to describe. Tell me your experience. "Well, I can never slow down. I'm constantly moving. I feel driven. I can't sit all the way through a movie. I can't sit all the way through dinner without getting up and walking around. I'm jittery. I overreact." Oh, so what you're talking about is what it's like to feel hyper aroused inside. There's no fear to that. It's just that you're hyper aroused.
Right.
It's always good to get the right diagnosis.
Interesting.
And so it's always good to ask the right questions.
Okay, so when it comes to questions, I thought this would be kind of fun. Hopefully you have something to write with, not only to take notes, but we're going to take a little test. So there's lots of ADHD tests out there. I don't put this out on the internet. I don't tell everybody this, but most of my questions do come from Dr. Dodson's evaluation form for ADHD. So if you want to, at the end, I can't officially diagnose you, obviously, because I'm a coach, but this will give you a really good idea of where you fall. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through 26 questions. I'm going to go rather quickly just because I'm looking at the time. But what I want you to do is you answer yes if the trait that is in the question, if it or the behavior, if it has consistently impaired your functioning for as long as you can remember. You didn't just do it once or twice. If you have a tendency to say sometimes to the question, then I want you to say no. So you're just going to write, I would just number like 1 through 26. We're just going to put yes or no. The only reason we're keeping track is so that at the end you can kind of see where you scored. So let's go. For as long as you can remember, have you had trouble paying attention to details, or do you make careless errors in your work? Have you had lifelong difficulty concentrating on tasks which you find boring or uninteresting to you? Do you daydream or not seem to listen when people speak to you directly? Have you consistently had difficulty finishing projects that you've started? Do you have difficulty organizing your work, or do you become disorganized if not strictly following a plan or list? Do you procrastinate or put off undesirable tasks until the last possible moment? Have you always had a tendency to lose things necessary to accomplish your daily activities? So it could be your keys, your phone, your wallet, your glasses. Have you always been easily distracted by unimportant sounds and events around you? Have you always been forgetful? Names, assignments, deadlines, appointments. Don't worry, we're not going to make you tell on yourselves, by the way. You can keep your score to yourself if you want, because I would be off the charts on this. Have you always had difficulty sitting still or fidgeted excessively? Have you always had difficulty staying seated at church, in a movie, during a class? If you guys need to walk around right now, you can. For as long as you can remember, have you been restless? Do you experience significant difficulty relaxing or slowing down to do leisure activities quietly? Have you always been described as high energy or always on the go? Do you talk excessively and or often lose track of what you're saying in conversations? Your entire life, have you had a pattern of blurting out the answer before the questions have been completed? Have you always been impatient or had difficulty waiting your turn in a group? Grocery store, driving. Oh my gosh, driving. That's a hard one for me. Do you frequently interrupt or intrude on others? Like, do you butt into conversations or games? But in a cute way. Have you always been very sensitive, more than others, to rejection, teasing, criticism, or your own perception that you have failed or fallen short? Do you have a hot temper for which you have no warning? Do you have a stand-up comedy like tendency or a wacky, zany sense of humor? Do you find that you fall asleep when you sit still or suddenly get drowsy when boring tasks are prolonged? For as long as you can remember, have you had a great deal of difficulty waking up and being fully alert in the morning? Have you been told that you move about excessively during sleep? That's the kind of thing I'd tell my husband to keep to himself, but I digress. Your entire life, have you consistently had trouble turning off your mind so you could fall asleep? And finally, will you often hyperfocus? So that means that you have periods of activity during which you are so engrossed or involved in what you're doing that you're undistractable by people or events around you and you lose track of the passage of time. Okay, so again, this is not a formal diagnosis, but this is very similar to a professional evaluation that someone like Dr. Dotson would do. So we can count on the results as being pretty accurate. If you scored between 0 and 6, you're neurotypical-ish. In other words, you might have some ADHD-like qualities, but you might just be the kind of person who, like, every now and then forgets some things, but may not be ADHD. Uh, if you scored between 7 and 12, there's probably some ADHD there. High probability that your brain runs on 37 tabs, 2 playlists, and one crisis, right? So, and then here we go. For you, those of you that are a little more advanced in ADHD world, 13 to 19, certified ADHD vibes, and 20 to 26, you are boss level ADHD. I don't know if anybody wants to just announce that they are a boss, but I am definitely an ADHD boss. Okay. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I'm looking at the time. But just so you know, if you decide to go get evaluated, this was just Russell Barkley. If you're familiar with him, he's all over the internet. He's written lots of books. Dr. Dodson refers to him quite a bit. He's one of my very favorites. But he's just, I really get frustrated with the neurodivergent world and getting a diagnosis and all of the misinformation. Just know that an evaluation is going to focus a lot on behaviors, and ADHD really lives in the mind. It overemphasizes attention deficits and doesn't focus enough on executive function and self-regulation impairments. And it's also male biased. And so we really want someone who can dive in deep and understand how to give us a proper diagnosis. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to go through these rather quickly because I want to also get to the good stuff that you're really here for. I just thought it would be interesting to have some information that you may not have known already. There's a lot of information out there that ADHD doesn't really exist and it was made up by Big Pharma. I am not a fan of Big Pharma, and so I understand why people will say this sometimes, but I just wanted to put out there that the diagnosis has actually been around since 1905 and stimulant medications have been around since 1937. So they weren't created by Big Pharma. They actually work for people who, I mean, now Big Pharma is definitely involved, but we've been using them for a long time. I'm not anti-medication, and I'm definitely not a medication pusher either. Half of my children are on them and half of them aren't. Stimulant medication can be a game changer. I have elementary school kids that come to me that have been kicked out of 2 or 3 different schools. They don't have any friends. They're taking money and chips to the playground to make friends. They've never been invited to a birthday party. And then they're on medication and it completely changes their life. There's just not a one size fits all. I'm definitely not scared of medication, but if you would have asked me about 6 years ago, I would have said, no, don't put your kids on medication. I'm a very natural person. I don't love medication, but it absolutely can change lives. And I've had a lot of struggles with my own kids. When your own kids are going through hard things, or I see clients and they're really struggling, I would say that when it comes to ADHD, the most impairing thing that all of my clients deal with, whether they're children or adults, is self-confidence. And one of the reasons for that is that you have to be pretty consistent in your life. You have to know that you're going to show up when you say you will. You have to be able to hit deadlines and trust yourself to be able to show up in every area of your life, work, your personal relationships. People with ADHD struggle with that because sometimes we can turn our brains on and we can just dive in and get to work. And it's like, wow, what we did was amazing. And other times we're stuck in paralysis and we're missing a deadline, or we're just not getting it done. And so we're constantly like up and down. Makes it really difficult for us to trust ourselves, especially children. And we experience a fractured self-esteem, imposter syndrome, and all kinds of other things when it comes to the way that we see ourselves, because there is so much dysregulation with ADHD. People outgrow ADHD. This is not true. But again, as I mentioned before, because the DSM only goes up to age 16, many times adults will even think, oh, I used to have ADHD when I was a kid. I don't do those things anymore. But it's a genetic and neurological condition. And so you don't ever grow out of that. You might outgrow some of the symptoms. You might learn how to do things differently so that life is really working for you, but your neurological system doesn't change. And they can see the difference between an ADHD brain and a typical brain in infancy on brain scans. It's quite fascinating. And this is just one quick example. We could go through a lot of these, but it's not necessary today. Just like symptoms of if you were someone who was hyperactive when you're younger, maybe you squirm and fidget, you couldn't stay in your seat, you couldn't play or work quietly. Now, as an adult, maybe it manifests as being a workaholic, you're overscheduled and overwhelmed, you can't relax. If you were on the go as a child, maybe you're engaged in constant activity as an adult. So that's just one example of the way that the symptoms might manifest as we're older. ADHD is a school disorder and medications are not necessary evenings, weekends, summers, or holidays. Dr. Dodson's wife has ADHD and so do two of his three children. And so he definitely didn't believe, like, if you are someone that really medication makes a big difference for you, he recommends taking it all the time. But again, I don't push medication, but one of the arguments for medication, especially for children today, is that adolescents with ADHD have 4 times as many injuries or accidents. Also, they're 3 times more likely to be involved in substance abuse, and this is because we're dopamine chasers. And so the ADHD, the medication is actually mirroring a molecule that the brain is just burning through very quickly. So when that molecule is mirrored or matched, it slows the brain down. It slows processing. It slows, the impulse control. It helps to be able to focus. So those that are really struggling, it can make a huge difference because ADHDers are so impulsive in their decision making. Some of the reasons we may choose to take our medication daily rather than just once a week or not on the weekends is because it will help you remember important tasks and appointments. It will really help you manage your emotions, avoid accidents, and there's a lot of others here. People with ADHD make excuses to be lazy. We just hear this a lot from the community that's not ADHD, and so this will also really play into one's self-esteem. There's a lot of, especially ADHD women, women mask a lot better than men do. So we look around, we read the room, we see what people are doing, we conform, but there's a lot of internal dialogue going on, and many times it's negative. It's comparing, why can they do that and I can't? And many times, if you've had ADHD or known that you've had ADHD since a child or since childhood, the statistics show that by age 10, ADHD children have heard over 20,000 corrective messages. I mean, just think about what that does to your self-esteem. And so we hear this a lot, like, you just got to try harder. You just got to focus more. She can do it. Why can't you do it? Your brother's sitting still. Why can't you sit still? There's a lot of that going on, and it really is damaging for the ADHD individual who is focusing, who is trying. So we just really want to emphasize to caregivers, teachers, adults who are working with ADHD children, and it's true for adults too, that this is their cognitive functioning. It's not them being lazy. Many ADHDers are very smart on average. They have a higher IQ than the general public. They know what needs to be done. They just can't get their brain to do it a lot of the time. Children who take ADHD medication are more likely to abuse drugs. I've found this to not be true. In fact, the bigger problem is that they can't remember. ADHDers do not remember to take their medication. Statistics show that in between months 3 and 5, there's a huge drop in how many people with ADHD actually go to refill their medication. That's a much bigger problem than the drug abuse. The argument is that people who are going to abuse drugs will abuse anything that they can get their hands on. So I'm not going to get into the weeds on that because there's a lot I could say, but ADHD is the result of bad parenting. If anyone has a child with ADHD, I just want to put this in here that absolutely not. When a child is acting out in their behavior, they can't control their impulses. It's not because they've been taught it's okay to do so. And overly strict parenting is actually really damaging for a child with ADHD to punish them for things that they can't control. We need more education about ADHD and more processes and systems when it comes to managing behavior. And finally, someone with ADHD could get more done if they would just focus harder. Absolutely not true. And one thing that I want to put out here is that ADHDers are usually terrible at self-appraisal or self-evaluation. When I put that out on social media, people come out of the woodwork arguing about it. But a lot of times what that really means is that things will keep happening over and over again in their lives. And it's like, why do I keep doing this? Why am I not fixing this? So many times it's difficult for us to appraise ourselves and figure out how to solve some of those problems, things that just keep recurring and coming up over and over again. Um, let's see, is there anything on here that I didn't address yet? I think I addressed self-confidence enough. Yes. So just recognizing that absolutely a lot of these things that we hear are not true. And we're going to talk about how the brain is different. I just wanted to highlight a couple of other things that that the most important things on here is that average age of diagnosis is 31, so we don't think of this as a childhood disorder anymore. If you have know anyone, and this is how my whole family was diagnosed, my sister had a binge eating disorder and was getting help for that, and that's how she was diagnosed with ADHD, and then all of us started being diagnosed with ADHD. Binge eating and teeth grinding are associated with ADHD. Also, if you're somebody who does struggle falling asleep or feels groggy or tired in the morning, it's an actual thing. It's not just something that we say just because it's just like, oh, we all feel this way. It's a coincidence. No, ADHDers actually get a full burst of energy when the sun goes down. So you could be dead tired all day long, like cannot wait to get into bed. And then right about 7 o'clock, it's like, hey, I'm going to get some work done. And all of a sudden, you can't go to sleep. You can't settle down because your brain is wired and ready to go. It's an actual thing. When someone is bored, and think of ADHD children as well, this is such a heavy, overwhelming feeling. Boredom is one of the most overwhelming emotions for an ADHDer. The teenagers that I work with will describe it as almost like their life has no meaning. And then also a common misdiagnosis for someone with ADHD is bipolar disorder. That's how intense the emotional dysregulation of ADHD can be, is that many times the bipolar disorder is a misdiagnosis and it's actually ADHD. And then one other thing I put in here in case you have a child with ADHD is that ADHDers, they learn best by visually, of course, but if somebody can show them an A+ project, if they can say, this is what was done last semester, A+, that really helps someone with ADHD, and ADHDers will start at the end and then move backwards towards the beginning to complete projects, usually to write papers. We go to the end, to the completed project, and then figure out how to get it done moving backwards towards the beginning, which I think is really interesting and not something that neurotypical individuals do. Okay, I want to touch on this real quickly, but I told Amy that I wouldn't go too deep into it. I just told her I thought it was necessary to put it in here because whenever I do a webinar or I talk about this, so many women reach out to me and say, I struggle with this, and I didn't know that it had anything to do with ADHD. There's something called RSD. And RSD stands for Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria or Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria. And I would say just a couple of years ago, most people that I talked to had never heard about this before. Now it's really gotten out and it's been on the internet, and so more people have heard of this. Rejection Sensitivity Dysphoria falls under the umbrella of emotional dysregulation in ADHD. So remember earlier we were talking about two core symptoms or two core categories, distractibility and emotional dysregulation. This is not a separate diagnosis. It's just that Dr. Dodson says 95% of those with ADHD will experience RSD or rejection sensitivity dysphoria to some degree. But what's also interesting is that 1/3 of all adults with ADHD say that it is the most impairing part of their ADHD. And so RSD can be triggered by any kind of rejection, real or perceived. And about 50% of the time or more, it's usually perceived. But teasing, constructive criticism, falling short on their personal goals, failing to meet their own high standards or failing to meet someone else's. And so this could be like I was coaching a woman recently who owns a business and she has raving reviews about what she does. One person made a personal complaint to her, and 3 weeks later, she is torturing herself. She can't sleep. She's struggling. She stopped posting on social media for a couple of weeks. She was even thinking about making huge changes to her business. That's usually RSD. So nobody likes to feel rejected. Nobody does. But when you have ADHD, RSD is an entirely different level. It is huge. And so we call what happens when we start experiencing RSD an RSD episode. So, in other words, somebody says something or somebody does something, and we start spiraling, and it can be difficult to get out of. I'm not going to go into this too much more because I want to get to the other things. But what I will say is that if there's someone in your life that is very sensitive, uses absolute words like you always say this, or I'm never good enough, or you don't love me. If you have that kind of thing going on in your home, it's probably RSD, and you can't get somebody else out of an RSD episode. You have to let it run its course. They need to go be alone with their thoughts, calm themselves down. It's not usually very helpful to send them away because they're already experiencing rejection, but it's also not a time to even try to de-escalate, talk through, or even apologize. The RSD has taken hold. It's already been triggered. And so they need to learn about RSD, but they need to be able to calm themselves down before they'll be able to have any kind of a rational conversation. But this is huge. And I would say in my 20s, I wasn't diagnosed until I was 40. I didn't know about RSD. I didn't know that's what I was experiencing, but it can be so intense. I actually felt like I was being clawed from the inside out sometimes. If you've had any additional trauma or abandonment issues, or you're going through really big things in your life, it heightens the symptoms of RSD. So some people will lash out and really show how they're feeling. Many women will keep it all together. They'll mask. You'd never know anything was wrong, but inside they're spiraling. Huge part of RSD. Um, One thing that I was going to mention or talk about, but I don't feel like I have time, is I was going to talk about a child and how this can manifest in the classroom. So we won't go into it today, but so many of the kids that I work with, it is manifesting for them constantly. It's being triggered, and there's a lot of people who do not understand RSD, how it manifests, how to work with it. And so kids will be looked at as being difficult, dramatic, terrible behavior, disrespectful. But what you need to know about RSD is in the moment when it flares, most of the time, especially children, they cannot control themselves. They need skills or tools. We need maturity. That's why adults do a better job of masking. But if they really struggle with this and they're acting out, they don't know how. And so this is why a child might start crying if we say things like you're being dramatic or something like that, because they're feeling so misunderstood and they're not able to control how they're feeling. Okay, so let's shift our focus a little bit to women and ADHD entrepreneurs, and how we can learn to take control over our brains and really hone in on the superpower by overcoming maybe some of the things that we find are holding us back. And by the way, everybody, whether they have ADHD or not, has things that they have to work on. And so when somebody's going to get a proper evaluation in a doctor's office, or they're just working with me in coaching, we're always identifying, well, what are the things that are debilitating? We might do a lot of things, but some of those things aren't causing any problems, or they're just like kind of funny. We want to focus on like, where do I really want to experience improvement or change some of the things that I'm doing? I took a couple of minutes to put in some memes that really related to like the average working ADHD woman. So if any of these, like I think all of these are me, you can just get a good laugh if any of these are you. When you have ADHD and you're told to highlight important information, looking for my phone from the flashlight with my phone. I've done that like several times, not just once. Password, wrong, reset password, and it says you can't use your old password. Oh my gosh. Stacks of paper, mail, and clothes have become part of my home decor. I have a great new idea. I start the project, I tell everyone, and do I ever finish the project? To just kind of cycle here, because the telling everyone is the dopamine hit. That's the fun part. But are we finishing the project? What's your first priority? How do I even decide? Because I have 7 first priorities. I'm completely overwhelmed with my life. I don't have time for anything else, but I want to join a book club, start a nonprofit for kids, learn to bake bread, plant a garden, get chickens, volunteer at the school, spend more time working on my goals. This happened to one of my clients recently. Your phone dies in the middle of the night because even though you plugged your phone into the charger, your charger wasn't plugged into the wall. I don't usually think about what I say before I say it. I prefer to think about it after I've said it late at night for the rest of my life. Me trying to get 8 hours of sleep in just 3 hours. Did you spend $300 on pants? No, I would never do that. Plants. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did that. And things I like to do, things I'm good at, things that make me money, but things I'm actually doing in my day. If you relate with any of those, then you probably have ADHD. But let's just real quickly do an overview of like, why does ADHD sometimes get in the way of our routine or what we're trying to accomplish? Why does it disrupt our traditional workflows? Well, we can have trouble starting tasks. So even when a task feels urgent or important, we can struggle to get started. We have a poor sense of time. ADHDers are known to look at time in just two ways, now or not now. So if it's in the not now category, we're not even thinking about it. But people with ADHD will misjudge how long something will take or lose track of time altogether, especially if we're hyper focusing. That's why we have this running joke that at like 10:05, we're running out of the house to try to get somewhere by 10. Working memory gaps. So without visual cues or reminders, tasks can disappear from our mind within minutes. We have a high sensitivity to distractions. A single message or a noise can really derail us. And then we have inconsistent energy and focus. So some days will bring clear mental focus and other days will feel foggy and scattered, and there won't be any obvious reason for this. So we're going to talk about procrastivity. And procrastivity is a word we use to describe what ADHDers do to continue to feel productive and get things done without getting the thing done that really needs to get done. And I apologize that I'm going quick here, but hopefully you can take some screenshots or also watch the replay. But when it comes to positive procrastination, that's really what procrastivity is representing. Is usually we'll plan on doing something. And I could tell myself all week, like this weekend, I'm going to work on my taxes. Saturday, that's the day I have time. I'm going to do it. And then the day it comes, it's Saturday, it's time to do the taxes. I'm like, well, here's the thing though. Like I never did ever make cookies for my neighbor. And I was trying to do that for the last 2 weeks. And honestly, like I really need to organize my closet and I need to go get a car wash. I'll start getting distracted and I'll start thinking of other things that I really didn't get done this week, even though every day I told myself Saturday's the day, I'm not doing anything else. And so we'll rationalize why we can just do it later. We always want to get out of doing the thing that we don't want to do right now with the big lie, I will do it later. And the reason why we do this is because not only do we only want to do things that our brain wants to do, but when it comes to procrastivity, we can rationalize that I am getting things done. This thing needed to be done, that thing needed to be done. I'm staying busy. I'm having a very productive day. But it's the way that our brain escapes doing the one thing that we really needed to get done. So we get to walk away still feeling productive, right? I didn't just sit around and watch Netflix all day. But the reason we're doing this is because our brain gravitates towards, for one thing, if we are going to choose between, like, I wouldn't want to mow the lawn, really. That's not something I would be excited about doing. And I don't mow the lawn. But if it was between mowing the lawn and sitting down and doing my taxes, I'll choose mowing the lawn all day, unless it's like 120 degrees outside, because I can stand up. I can use my body, and I know how long it's going to take. Like I've already seen the lawn being mowed several times, or I've mowed it before. And so we want manual tasks where we can use our body, we can be standing up, walking around. We want to have a definitive time frame. Our ADHD brain wants to know what's involved, how long is it going to take and when am I going to be done? So if I have to sit down and work on my taxes in my brain, that could take all day. I don't even know. I don't know where that's going to take me. It sounds terrible. I'm going to be sitting down at my computer. So just understanding what your brain gravitates towards and what it wants. And this is why if you have kids and you have Saturday chores and you're like, oh, we're almost done. We'll see. We just have a little bit more left. They hate that. They want to know. This will be one of the biggest gripes, just like everyday gripes from ADHD teenagers, is that, oh, my mom, it's just this like never ending, I never know when I'm going to be done. They want to know whether we give them an hourly time frame or we tell them you're going to have 5 things to do. It's like, even if it's bad news, our brain wants that calculation so that there is an endpoint and there's clear information about the tasks. Otherwise, it just feels so much more overwhelming in our brain. So this isn't a knowledge problem, or it's a performance problem, because ADHDers tend to think also that like everything needs to be perfect, even our mood. Like I'm not in the right mindset to do that right now. I just don't feel like doing it. we're never going to feel like doing it. I'm never going to feel like sitting down and doing my taxes. And so, knowledge and having awareness to this really can make a big difference. Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm helping myself feel good while avoiding the most important things. So, just being aware of procrastivity is probably something that almost every one of my ADHD clients does. And it makes sense. We don't want to be bored. Boredom, overwhelming. We're dopamine chasers. We're already depleted in dopamine. So we're constantly looking for things to do all day long. I would rather drive around and run errands or do things that I could be listening to a podcast or music than sitting down working on something like taxes or billing. Understanding you'll never be in the mood. We're going to talk more about this, but just a couple highlights here is that we always want to have an actionable plan if we have something that's due, a deadline, a project. For me, I always do the thing that I dread the most first. Sometimes people out there will say, just do the easiest thing just to get started. I mean, if you're really having a hard time getting started, doing something is better than nothing. But I have always found that doing the hardest thing first is the most beneficial, because then everything gets easier after that. And now I've gotten that out of the way. And having a reason that you want to do it. Our brain only focuses on what is important to it. So if you haven't given yourself a really good reason, sit down and give this to yourself. So in other words, we have to plan, why do I want to get this done? What does it mean for me? What will the reward be? And then come up with a process for getting it done. So this is the part. Does anyone have questions?
Yes, Jheri, I was just gonna pop in here real quick. You're so good. This is such good information. We're hit an hour, so I know I feel like we're gonna have a part two here. Everyone
Yes.
is gonna have to message me if they want a part two. But if you can like wind up maybe 5 minutes here, and then we'll have to maybe get some Q&A over text, and maybe we can do a part two if you have some more availability. You're so great.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's so much in here that I wanted to cram in. I thought an hour is going to be so short. So just take some notes here. This is the part that I think will really help you when it comes to organizing your brain. There's an acronym, NICUP. And NICUP stands for Novelty, Interest, Challenge or Competition, Urgency or Passion. So what we know about the ADHD brain is one of these 5 things has to be present to be able to get our brain engaged. So a neurotypical person can get their brain engaged just because something is important or there will be a reward at the end. That's utterly useless for someone with ADHD. Someone with ADHD, not all of these 5 things has to be present, but at least one of them does. So just to highlight novelty, that's pretty obvious, right? Something new or unfamiliar. If we can, what we're trying to do is inject one of these 5 things into the task that we're doing. So if it's novelty, then our brain will get engaged and it will get excited and move forward on whatever we're doing. If it's something that you're already interested in, right?
A friend of mine who's a
I'm
pediatrician.
not going to show that, but he talks about somebody who was failing out of medical school. They were bottom of their class, and he had a teacher that took interest in him, recognized some of the things that he was really cared about, and let him write his paper about the thing that he was interested in and combine it with the medical research they were doing. He ended up graduating second in his class. So that's the difference between him completely almost failing out and this teacher taking an interest and then him rising to the top. So again, it's not that ADHDers aren't smart. It's not even a knowledge problem. It's about getting their brain engaged. So if he can write a paper on something that he's interested in, he's going to have an A paper. If he could care less, it's going to be so difficult for him to get his brain engaged, and it's probably not going to be an A paper. Anytime there's a challenge or competition in front of us presented, our brain will get engaged. Urgency. Now, this is the reason why you might have something in front of you that needs to get done and you put it off all week. And then at 10 o'clock the night before, you are cranking it out, because an ADHD brain, you can almost think of it as like buttons, like you push the button and the light just turns on and your brain turns on. Urgency turns the brain on, and we can hyperfocus for hours if our brain can get engaged. And then finally, passion, anything that you feel passionate about that gives you purpose. And so the goal is to find things that can turn your brain on. So there's this one guy who had ADHD, and he would clean his kitchen perfectly. He'd even like wipe the glasses. There'd be no fingerprints. And we asked him, like, how do you do that? You have ADHD. How are you so meticulous? And he said, I just pretend that I'm in the FBI and that I am, doing whatever he's doing, and I can't leave any fingerprints or any traces. And that's how I clean the kitchen every time I do it. Another woman that I was coaching told me that she would walk around, she would get tired of the monotony of just like housewife type stuff. She loved being a stay-at-home mom, but she just got tired of the routine. And so she would pretend that there was a camera crew following her around, and she would turn around, talk to the camera. And she said it made all of her tasks more interesting. So there's like so many silly things that we do. One thing that I wanted to highlight when I'm working with my clients, and I'm not going to have time to get into all of this, is that mindset is so important too. So I'll tell my clients, like, we can give you processes and things to do. This is why people will absorb podcasts and books and different things like that. But it's hard for them to implement, because if your mindset still believes I'm lazy, I have a hard time with this thing or that thing, I procrastinate, I'm not very good at it, then it doesn't matter what kind of processes you have, your brain will not stick to it. So we want to change our mindset about what we believe we can accomplish or who we are and how we show up, and then combine that with some different processes. So I'll just read this real quickly, and then we can be done. I categorized it into a few different categories, but when it comes to task and time initiation, anytime that we can make something a game or a challenge, I like using timers. If I tell myself on Saturday I'm going to clean my bathroom, it will take me 4 hours because I'll go downstairs and I'll get distracted. If I put on a timer and I say, okay, in 20 minutes, I'm just going to do whatever I can get done in 20 minutes, I know that timer is going to go off, and my brain tries to race and see if I can get it done in 18 or 19 minutes. Also, visual timers, body doubling is a thing. You don't even have to be working on the same thing. If you have somebody in the same room as you can get twice as much done. And then, of course, if you are working on the same thing, it's very helpful. The if-then implementation of intention. So you can have rules for yourself, like if it's 9 a.m., then my computer's open and I'm checking my emails. If I'm in my bathroom and I'm doing my face routine, I have 10 minutes to get in bed. So attaching the if-then implementation intentions into some specific tasks that you have throughout your day or your week. And then the temptation bundling, so pairing a chore or a work with a reward. Do this with teenagers. They'll make a special playlist with only some of their favorite songs, and they only listen to that playlist when they're doing the dishes or they're doing a chore that they don't like, so they actually have something to look forward to. When it comes to focus and distraction, I don't know if you guys know, there's websites and apps out there that will block different websites and apps for a period of time. There's a handful of them out there, but Freedom's a really good one. Also, just having ADHD tuned music or white noise when you're working on projects, and paying attention to environmental cues. So headphones if it's loud, working in a space that's either like a single tasking space or minimal visual clutter so that you're not distracted. When it comes to planning and prioritizing your day, daily planning and time blocking. So ADHDers really benefit from doing planning or decision making ahead of time, so you can plan the day and then assign tasks to a clock time. Some of my clients like to go back at the end of the day after they've planned out their day the night before. At the end of the day, they'll go back and review how they actually use their time. I had a client that was just telling me, I used to feel like I was just so busy and I worked all the time. I was always, sitting at my desk working. But then when I did a review of my time blocking, I found that I was getting up and going to the bathroom. I was scrolling social media for 23 minutes. Anyways, I wasn't doing as much work as I thought I was. When we have that awareness, again, we're not very good at self-appraisal. We can go back and make adjustments, but we have to do the planning ahead of time. We have to plan our day, and then we have to go back and review, how did I actually spend my time? Doing the most difficult task first. I really also I love using Trello. It's so easy to do because I can have a to-do list, things I'm still working on and things that are done. It's very satisfying to move the cards over. It's very easy to visually see. My assistant at the end of each day will put things in my to-do list, and it's very easy for me to just organize and stay on task, and I can keep it open all the time. I can use it on my phone. At home, having landing zones, like a place to put your keys, clear bins and labels for things, having something by the bedroom door for kids or by the front door where the backpack, the keys, the water bottles go so we don't lose it. Very visual, so using checklists, having sticky notes, putting things on your door, on your mirror so that you don't forget. Digital hygiene has been really important for me, using only one calendar. Email filters have been a lifesaver for me. By the way, I am not good at setting these things up. I have to hire a virtual assistant. There's college students that will do it for you for cheap, but just getting it set up, having my email filters of, things from the school, things for work, clients, things that I haven't read. I mean, all of that has been a lifesaver for me. We have decision fatigue. So trying to make decisions about what to do, how to do it, where to start can be difficult. So having an assistant that can just do the things that you're not good at, like setting some of those things up for you, we're really good at usually following those things if we can get it set up. It's the setting it up and figuring out how to structure it that our brains will many times struggle with. And then finally, just some highlights too, is just like having written instructions for for things, putting air tags on your belongings, red light, green light, like urgent, not urgent. Other things is like with ADHD, we have to put things into bite-sized pieces. So if you tell a child, clean the basement, they're going to think this will take all day. But if you break it into 4 categories, and then it's like, here, do this for 10 minutes, take a break. Do this for 10 minutes, take a break. Same thing with us. It's like breaking it down into pieces, and you want to give yourself breaks. Like ADHDers get very overwhelmed. How long is this going to take? So anywhere between like 20 to 25 minute of task and then taking a 5-minute break. The thing that I didn't really, and I'll wrap up, get to hit on today that I think is important is ADHD boosters will prevent you from ADHD burnout. A lot of times we just think of burnout as I need a rest, I need nap. ADHDers are not usually burnt out from lack of rest. They're burnt out from lack of dopamine. So if you take a day off to do your laundry and clean your house and then you don't feel rejuvenated the next day, it's probably because you didn't do enough dopamine boosting. So I like to pay attention to, am I taking time on the weekends or my day off to really boost my dopamine? And also, am I doing preventative things throughout the week? It could be anything from hiring a house cleaner or someone to run errands. And then in my day specifically, I will plan 2 to 3 ADHD boosters in my morning and afternoon. And they're usually just 20-minute breaks. Like sometimes it might be to go get a massage, but it's Marco Poloing my sister. It's listening to my favorite podcast. It's going on a walk. It's running and getting my favorite drink. That's how we prevent ADHD burnout. ADHDers are known for hyperfocusing, working for hours at a time, not taking a break, then getting burnt out and they can't do anything the rest of the day. We want to manage our energy, schedule the most important things when we have the most energy, and then put boosters throughout our day so that we can keep the momentum going. And I could keep going on and on, but I apologize. I want to respect your time. So we'll end right there, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you so much. We could listen to you all day. As I was listening to you, I thought, I mean, it's been an hour and 15 minutes of Jheri talking. Could you have sat and listened to taxes for an hour and 15 minutes? Like, this is something that's so interesting, and we're so fully engaged that we can hyper focus on it because we're so intrigued by what she's saying. So, anyway, yes, the chats here, this was amazing. You're amazing, Jheri. Felt like you were speaking directly to me. Thank you so much. So good. You're so good and a wealth of knowledge. And I agree with you. There has not been enough education and information about this. And it's so interesting. We're all laughing as you're sharing all those. I don't know if you could see everyone's faces, but as you're going through like the questions and then the memes, and everyone's just dying laughing because it's like, that's literally me all day, every day. And so thank you for bringing a lot of this awareness. You all, Jheri, can you tell us how they can get in touch with you or what it is that you do or provide?
Sure, absolutely. I work as a coach, and so I work with adults. I work one-on-one. I'm just putting together and launching some group coaching programs starting in January. I love to go and speak, so I'll go speak at different women's groups. So I'll go into the schools and I'll work with teachers and administrators. So I work as a coach, but I also have a huge passion for trying to make a difference in the community and provide education. There is so much misinformation out there. So I do have, for like $97, you can get most of the interviews of Dr. Dodson and a course on ADHD. It's on my website. I have a lot of freebies there. It's jherisouth.com. You can go there. You can reach out to me if you have questions and just say, hey, I was at this presentation. I'm happy to just answer some questions. And I have resources for 504s and IEPs, things like that I just offer to anyone who's looking for information. So you can find me on social media at Jheri South, or you can go to my website at jherisouth.com. And I offer free consults as well if you know of someone who's looking for help with their ADHD and they are looking for a coach.
Thank you so much. You're a wealth of knowledge. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. The recording will go out, like I said, tonight or tomorrow, whenever Devi and I get it in an email out to you. And if you have any questions, please reach out to her on Instagram. Again, thank you. We can't thank you enough for your time and everything that you shared. Thank you.
You're
See
welcome.
you
Thanks,
guys all
everyone.
next time. Thank you.